Did you know that it's almost been 250 years since the Boston Tea Party? Massachusetts Masonry has a pretty epic celebration coming up to celebrate just that, plus a whole lot more of amazing history in that area. We have an awesome guest on tonight that's going to walk us through all that and more, so you won't want to miss out. Stick with us right after this on Historical Light.
Welcome back to the Historical Light Masonic Podcast, dedicated to illuminate our past and bring our Masonic history to light since 2016. And now, enjoy the show.
Good evening and welcome back to Historical Light, independent Masonic show focused on the historical events and aspects within Freemasonry. I'm your host, Brother Alex Powers. Happy to be back with you for another episode. We have with us Brother Bryan Simmons from Massachusetts this evening. My brother, thank you so much for being back on.
Thanks for having me.
So, it's been a while since you've been on the show, so just in case they don't remember, will you give us a proper introduction of who you are and your role in Freemasonry?
Sure. To be exact, I had to look it up because I knew it had been quite a while. I was on episode 10.
That's right. That's right. We're talking about Ezekiel Bates Lodge.
Yeah. I mean, that was a long time ago because I was just junior warden in my lodge at the time. But anyway, I'm Right Worshipful Bryan Simmons. I am a past master of Ezekiel Bates Lodge and a sitting district deputy for the 19th East District in Massachusetts. And I'm also the chairman for the Grand Lodge 250th Commemoration Committee.
So no pressure is what you're saying?
I'm busy.
That's awesome, man. So we like to start on here with a few icebreakers just to kind of get to know you a little better, especially since it's been a while since you've been on the show. What is it that got you into Freemasonry in the first place?
I would say the history of Freemasonry as a whole. And that journey kind of fluctuated because I went pretty fraternal for a while and then I wanted more. But I mean, now I'm kind of back on the history of it, as my main focus.
I think that's a really beautiful thing about Freemasonry because my experience has kind of ebbed and flowed like that as well. But it's really neat how you can find those different areas that really take you on and give you different opportunities within the craft, which has really been a part of the great experience for me. Now, tell me, did you have family history in Freemasonry prior to yourself?
I did not.
No. So what brought Freemasonry kind of into the picture for you? How did you discover it in the first place?
Ironically, it was, I don't know if you've seen them, but Massachusetts came out with an ad campaign 10, 15 years ago now with Ben Franklin.
Sure. Yeah.
They were running an open house and those videos were all over social media at the time. And it piqued my interest enough to reach out and meet some brothers.
That's awesome. That's fantastic, especially for the marketing department to hear it works.
Works sometimes.
Yeah. Well, they definitely got a good brother and got you looped into a few things. I hear you stay a little busy over there, right?
When I can.
Yeah. Well, dude, we are stoked to have you on the show this evening, man. Like I said, last time we got to talk to you, I had just came back from Masonic Con there at Ezekiel Bates Lodge, and you guys had this amazing museum put up in the lodge, and we kind of went all through that, plus the history of the lodge, and just stoked to have you back on because you're a true treasure to the craft, man.
I appreciate that.
All right, before we get into the meat and potatoes of this evening, I do got to give a quick shout out to our Patreon supporters that help us grow and sustain. We've been around since 2016 and devoted to the history of Freemasonry. So if you like what we've been doing around here and want to help us continue and grow, you can jump on and become a supporter as well through Patreon. You can go to the website, historicallight.com, click on support, and you can support the show through Patreon. We've got several different levels, and they each have specific benefits to those. So you can definitely jump on. Maybe I should put on the Patreon screen and not the starting soon screen. Talked about marketing. Maybe it should work for us too. So there you go. There's a QR. There's the URL, Patreon, and you can get those awesome lapel pins and ambassador badges and help the show grow and thrive. One other announcement before we get into it this evening. Masonic Con Kansas coming up in just a couple weeks here. We'll be in Kansas once again for the second year in a row. We had an amazing time last year, and let's see, we're sold out for festive board, but we still do have day passes and virtual passes available. So if you want to check that out, the awesome lineup of speakers and discussion panel we have lined up, you can go to MasonicConKansas.com and secure your ticket to join us there. That'll be coming up July 29th. Just right around the corner. July 29th. So get your ticket while you can. We hope to see you guys there. It's going to be a fantastic event. And throw him under the bus. It's this guy right here that got me into this whole Masonic Con thing. He had led the Masonic Con up in Ezekiel Bates in Attleboro, Massachusetts, and kind of lit a fire across the nation with various Masonic Cons popping up and just a new birth of Masonic education like we haven't seen before. So really an honor to be in that venture with you and be able to kind of take a little bit of light that you put out there for everybody and carry that on here in Kansas.
I think it's fantastic, and being at your event last year, it was a great time.
It was. We learned a ton. Obviously, with you guys paving the way, made it that much more obtainable. But still, doing it ourselves, learned a ton. So,
yep,
got a little more experience under the belt this year, and I'm sure we'll learn just as much this year as well. But hey, man, let's talk Massachusetts Freemasonry. So we're coming up on 250 years. Now, this is an event that's been talked about quite a bit in history in general, but has always been kind of an interesting aspect with Freemasonry. Was it Masonic? Was it not? Tell me a little bit about what this is, the Boston Tea Party, and then we'll get into what the celebration is and why it's important to Massachusetts Freemasonry.
So I think most people understand the Boston Tea Party is a bunch of rowdy folks marched down to Griffin's Wharf in Boston and casually tossed over some tea, right? Like it's pretty simple when you look at that aspect, but it's months of preparation in secret societies, which everyone's trusted because they're under oath to God. So I think it's important to note that Freemasonry was not a part of the Boston Tea Party, but Freemasons took advantage of tiled doors to discuss it, if that makes any sense. Obviously, Freemasonry doesn't allow us to have revolutions, but sometimes they happen. So anyway, Joseph Warren, who is, more or less the patron saint of Massachusetts Freemasonry. He was a martyr that was behind a lot of the planning. Good friends with Paul Revere and John Hancock, and the sitting Grand Master of the Lodge of St. Andrews and the Scottish sanctioned Scottish sanctioned lodges in Massachusetts at the time. We had a Scottish charter and an English charter, so two provincial grand lodges in the same state, which that would be all over Hodap's blog if that happened nowadays. But
isn't that interesting to compare Freemasonry of the time and Freemasonry today and how that would compare and contrast back and forth?
So fascinatingly enough, the Lodge of St. Andrews, which most of the revolutionaries did belong to, were chartered through Scotland. Joseph Warren was the Grand Master at the time, and it was mostly made up of mechanics, which would be the tradesmen and the working class, where the Lodge of St. John's Lodge in Boston was chartered through England, and that was most of your well-to-do folk. And arguably they leaned loyalist, where the Lodge of St. Andrew was clearly for the Revolution. It's very fascinating as you dig through it. So there were members of St. John's Lodge that were a part of the Tea Party, but the bulk of the Lodge of St. Andrew was legitimately the Tea Party,
Interesting.
along with, the Sons of Liberty and stuff like that. So you have like Sam Adams with the Sons of Liberty working with Joseph Warren and the Lodge of St. Andrew to discuss, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean that's fascinating. And when I had the opportunity to come up there for Masonic Con the first time, being the history nerd that I am, just that part of the country just like bleeds history, right? Like everywhere you go is just a notable location and so cool to be around. And it kind of makes me think, you can look at any town, even here in Kansas, which was, rural as hell back in the day, right? Like, I mean, parts of it still are, right? But, you think about Masonic lodges in these small towns as they're developed, and no matter where you're at, those Masons are some of the most influential men in the area during the times. I mean, you've got first sheriffs, first, educators, guys that are really making the path for these communities that develop. And in this part of the nation, we've got guys that are not just shaping their local area, but really shaping what is going to be what we know of America today. And just the impact that has is tremendous.
Yeah, it's like this giant onion that we've really started to peel. So for us, the 250th started in 2020, but it was scrubbed out with COVID. But the Boston Massacre would have had its 250th in 2020. Ironically, Plymouth, Massachusetts, which obviously is the founding, so to speak. Well, we're from New England. It's the founding. We don't care about Jamestown. That didn't work out. But Plymouth 400 was scrubbed too, which is unfortunate because they put a ton of money and effort into commemorating that. So in 2021, we did commemorate the first oration by Joseph Warren, which was billed as his coming out party, which I'm not a big fan of how it's worded, but it was kind of like his big, first oration that really blew people away.
Right.
So we did a tour at some of the historical societies in the cities around Boston, and New England Genealogical Historical Society. We did it there. Gorgeous building. We'll have to take you there. You'd go nuts.
Gosh, I'm
like literally
looking for a reason, man. Looking for a reason.
Full of Masons, ironically. The more we dig in with this 250th, like Masons are coming out of the woodwork that belong to all these organizations. A few weeks ago now, we had like a reception at Grand Lodge with the Grand Master and the heads of 23 different organizations in the city to kind of get everyone on the same page to see what's available and what we're going to do together and how this works.
Right.
And, I mean, we had, every organization, the Old South Meeting House, your favorite North Church. And like people just came out of the woodwork. We had the head of the Massachusetts National Guard coming, offering help. What can he do? How can we parade? What do you need? So there's so much behind this. And I think what people need to look at is it's not just like an anniversary. Like this is our generation's major anniversary for the nation, right?
Yeah.
Like a lot of people had the bicentennial. I wasn't born yet, but a lot of people pushing on the older end of the generation is saying, listen, the bicentennial was huge and we need to match that and plant the seeds of history in the next generation. And, so we're really taking that to heart. And I think that there's incredible opportunity to really showcase the history of Boston and everyone working together like it was then. There's like 10 or 15 different organizations that work together to form the Tea Party, and that was just one event.
100%. So, I mean, to put this into perspective, because we're thinking about, these influential men and how this event really shaped the nation. If the Boston Tea Party had not taken place, where do you think we would be?
So it's funny. The main reason that America is a major coffee drinker is because everyone said piss off to tea.
That's interesting. I've heard that before, but that's one of those facts I never remember.
So there was another, as we're digging into this, there were several merchants in Boston and the Eastern Seaboard that began transporting cocoa up. So cocoa became big in New England because of the Tea Party. So
Okay.
it opened the door where, like, if you're caught drinking tea, you're kind of a dirtbag, So it's fascinating how it works out. So I mean, there's considerable changes around that.
Yeah.
Obviously, there was retaliation from the British Crown about the Tea Party. King was pissed, blah.
Yeah.
And it just slowly escalated everything up. But it's something that had to be done. It was well planned. Everybody knew it was going to happen. It's believed. So we have what's called the Ancient and Honorables. I don't know if you've heard of them, but it's an artillery militia, more or less, that's been in Massachusetts since 1638 or something like that. It's like crazy old. They're still active. They had their headquarters above Faneuil Hall for centuries at this point. But supposedly they managed that they were the guards at the the ships that night, and it's all crazy.
That's
so the
wild.
Commemoration is just it's a huge kickoff, really, since we couldn't do the massacre, and the massacre is kind of hard to really commemorate because it's
right.
It's a messy situation to really explain,
For sure. Well, real quick, I want to give a shout out. We've got some guys on the Facebook side pinging in here. We've got Brother Young from Sunflower Lodge 86, Wichita, Kansas. Thanks so much for joining in. Of course, Justin Staley saying good evening, everybody. Good evening, brother. Thank you so much. Let's see. David Miller from Marietta, Ohio said Harmer Lodge number 390. Good evening. And of course, Yvette, my wife, sharing everything out for us this evening. She threw in a note here saying, hey, Bryan, your favorite thing to do is drive us around in Kansas. You did a lot of driving here in Kansas, didn't you?
Well, it's a hell of a lot better than letting your wife drive.
I told you. No, thank you guys, everybody, for joining us in live this evening. We've got a really great episode here tonight, learning all about the celebration. So 250 years, and the Grand Lodge of Massachusetts is really pushing this out. And we've got you as the chairman on this committee, correct? So
Yep.
Tell me a little bit about what can we expect for this celebration, and why should brothers put this on their calendar now to make sure they're there for this?
So I should say I'm the chairman of the 250 Commemoration Committee, which covers all the commemorations. So the Tea Party has its own chairman as Jeffrey Miller, who's doing a phenomenal job, him and his team, on coordinating everything and getting it ready. But we've already sent out invitations to 56 Grand Lodges, to the Grand Secretaries. So
They're getting around. I heard about it.
That's good. I mean, that's what we want. So essentially, we have actually gotten some RSVPs. We got to lock down a hotel pretty soon and get that wrapped up. But we do have a few Grand Masters already saying that they're going to be coming. So it should be a good time. So the whole event, Tea Party wise, is constructed by the Boston Tea Party Museum, which is a newer museum in Boston. It's not the original location because that doesn't really exist anymore. But they built two boats, essentially, that they're not exact replicas, but they're pretty similar to the original boats, the Dartmouth and the Beaver. You can go in the museum. They actually have a tea crate that was saved from the Tea Party, so you can kind of see what one looks like. And and it's nice. Ironically, they have a tea room upstairs. Doesn't make any sense to me, but oh my. But they've been great, and they're taking the lead on the city end of the programming. So what we're trying to do is put together a symposium on December 16th at Grand Lodge, inviting the lodges to showcase some of their artifacts, which some of the stuff that's coming out of the woodwork would just make you cringe to know that it's been in a closet. But
really,
yeah, it's crazy. It really is. And a lot of lodges, to their credit, have been restoring a lot of their stuff. So that's really cool.
Fair. Well, maybe this even serves as a reason for them to look. I mean, some of these lodges don't even realize what they have.
Oh, absolutely. And just to bring to light some of the stories. So we have a lodge out in Mike Jarzabek's area in Western Mass, so central, really, I guess. They named their lodge after Isaiah Thomas, the printer, who was a past Grand Master and a huge revolutionary influence. He was the senior Grand Warden, I believe, when Paul Revere was Grand Master. So Paul Revere chartered this lodge, Thomas Lodge. So they go out there, and to thank the lodge for the honor of naming their lodge after Isaiah Thomas presented them a set of Paul Revere jewels. So lodge still wears them on their installations. You know what I mean? Like, there's just like, how would you even imagine that, right? In the middle of like a small town, in the middle of Massachusetts.
Well, to think they still wear it. I mean, good Lord, to be able to wear something Paul Revere, that's unbelievable.
Oh, it's incredible. It really is, and just to have the story with it is what I like, so you can get a piece of anything, but to know the story on how this lodge got this jewel, and during the Morgan affair, the lodge went dark and each officer took his jewel home, and 30 years later, they all came back with their jewels and they rechartered the lodge. So like the opportunity to mess everything up, and they just didn't mess anything up. It's incredible.
That's fantastic. I mean, I still remember when I had the chance to come up there and, we got to dig through the Grand Lodge a little bit, just seeing the amount of amazing artifacts and history there. I mean, you mentioned Paul Revere. I still remember, not to sidetrack here, but nerding out, looking at this picture in a book with a little bit of hair and, Walter Hunt coming up saying, "Oh yeah, we've got that downstairs." Ended up being the urn handcrafted by Paul Revere with George Washington's lock of hair in it, and it was just amazing. I posted a picture with that, and I had brothers freaking out that they'd never seen it in person before. I didn't know it existed 20 minutes before that.
So that's interesting. So we have two urns. The Revere urn with George Washington hair is part of our installation for every new Grand Master. We get a Grand Master, has 3 one-year terms. So every 3 years we have a new Grand Master, and that's brought out every time a new Grand Master goes in. The rest of the time it is President Garfield's hair in an urn. It looks identical.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't realize there was a second one. That's pretty cool.
And the other 2 years they use that.
That's awesome.
It's very fascinating.
So now, who created the second urn? Was that Revere as well?
Well, no. I mean, Garfield would have died in late 1800s.
Yeah, I just didn't know if it was like a second urn, or is this just like one that was just?
It just looks like it. I don't know who made it.
Interesting. Me nerding out about the little stuff over here. That's awesome, man. So tell me about this event. What is some of the items on the agenda that you are most looking forward to? So
we wanted to put together like a weekend event, because obviously, I mean, you know how we are, and you're the same way, as we think big. So it's like, if we bank everything on one thing, like watching the tea go to the water, all right, well, that's cool. Well, what if it snows and it rains and the whole thing's ruined? So we wanted to have a full weekend available that you could have multiple things happening, and no matter what, you get to do something over the weekend. So we're going to start Friday potentially with a group tour to the Boston Tea Party Museum, because they'll have to close down Saturday so they can set up all the rigging and all that, and
Right.
lights and cameras. I mean, this is really setting out to be a major event for them. So that's fantastic. And then we're looking at doing a historic tavern tour that evening and going to some of the older taverns. Obviously, the Green Dragon is there, but it's not the original in the original location. But I mean, it's still a fascinating place to go with a bunch of brothers and, raise a pint and then head off to the next one. But we do have the Bell in Hand and the Oyster House. So some incredible history, and the buildings themselves are ancient, really.
Right.
Saturday, we're looking at doing a full day symposium at the Grand Lodge. The Valley of Boston is discussing doing a public degree, which I don't recall the name of it, but essentially it is what if the British won and they put George Washington on trial for treason. So I figured that was pretty rad.
Man, yeah.
So that'll kind of be mixed in there. We're trying to do some other stuff. We're trying to branch out and focus on some of the lesser known parts of the weekend, because everyone understands, all right, well, they met, they got mad, they threw tea.
Right.
But there's other stuff that happened, like the following day, Joseph Warren sent Paul Revere on a ride to New York to tell them about the Tea Party. One of Paul Revere's many rides, which we all only know of one, really. So I think that there's a lot we can really dig into and bring to light. That's going to be our focus for that all day at Grand Lodge. And then, like I said, we'll have some of the lodges showcasing some of the artifacts that they have. John Hancock Lodge just preserved and received back it's a commission from John Hancock when he was governor to appoint somebody a second lieutenant in the militia, which is kind of cool. So all that stuff we'll be able to get in one room and really kind of showcase it.
Man, so this is really, really honing in to be something quite spectacular. I mean, honestly, you kind of blew me off, totally off track there, thinking about George Washington being tried for treason. I've got that playing out in my head right now. But I'm thinking, with the magnitude of what you guys are talking about here, this is massive for Masonry. But I'm also thinking about really in general. This is going to draw some major public attention.
Yeah, they're talking about tens of thousands of people coming to Boston, and that's great.
Yeah.
We're ramping up, and we want to welcome them, everybody. But obviously, we give a special love to when Freemasons come and visit our Grand Lodge and some of the neighboring lodges. So we're expecting a few thousand Freemasons to be there. So following the symposium, the plan is that we're going to be meeting at Old South Meeting House, just as they did 250 years earlier, as well as Faneuil Hall, and forming what's being called a rolling rally, which is essentially an angry mob. And we're going to march to the Tea Party Museum. Now, they are using professional reenactors to do the actual Tea Party, which makes sense. Obviously, as Freemasons, we don't need a whole bunch of us trying to dress up as an indigenous people and throw in tea. So we'll let the professional reenactors handle all that. And then who knows? We might be doing a reception later on. We've really made some incredible community partnerships through all this that's opened the doors. So what we do after the tea's in the water, we don't know yet. But Sunday, we're talking about having the Grand Chaplains do a non-denominational service in the morning. And then if we can pull it off, they're trying to dedicate a plaque at where the Griffin's Wharf would have been, which is where the Intercontinental Hotel is right now. So if they can pull that off, they're going to dedicate a plaque saying, the Lodge of St. Andrew and
wow,
Masons were here and everything. But there's a lot of red tape involved in all that. So not too hopeful for it, but if they can pull it off, great. If not, maybe in next year. But
That's pretty awesome, man. So we're talking about this this all day symposium. Are you able to name drop anyone?
nope.
No. All right. We tried. We tried.
Yeah, I mean we're focusing on experts this time.
Yeah.
Not that Masons aren't experts, but we obviously want to bring in the best speakers to give the best piece of education we can. We hope to film it and do it in the Gothic Hall, which I'm sure you saw in the Scottish Rite. It's a beautiful space, and we can put high quality video together, and maybe PBS or one of the other TV stations will be able to pick it up, and we'll be able to spread some light that way. So that's ultimately the goal, is spread the light.
Yeah, no, this is fantastic, man. I mean, just to think about that, like, this is the stuff we need to be doing. And I mean, with this being such a major historical event, it's really awesome to see, I guess, that level of positive public influence and, like, attention versus all the crap you normally see. Like, this is going to be amazing for Freemasonry, to really be an opportunity to showcase what we are, who we are, and the positive side in a really great way. And, also just to spotlight that American history and bring everyone together is fantastic. I can't imagine the amount of weight you have on your shoulders trying to bring this all together, but I'm quite stoked for it, honestly.
Yeah, well, like I said earlier, Jeff Miller and his team are really, taking the lead on it and taking a lot of weight off me. So
that's fantastic.
That's been huge. We're planning 10 events right now over the next 3 years. So there's a lot of, irons in the fire, so to speak.
Right.
Like we were talking about before we went live. I mean, St. Patrick's Day 2026, Boston pretty much checks out of the Revolutionary War for the most part. That's our
we did our part. Your turn.
Yep, we started it. Finish it. So there will be commemorations after, July 4th of 26, but for the most part, all of our commemorations are before then. Right. So in 2024, we are partnering with Milton Historical Society and the Canton Historical Society to commemorate the Suffolk Resolves, which were written by Joseph Warren and the Boston. Well, some folks in Boston. I don't want to say the wrong thing or I'll get yelled at. But the Suffolk Resolves were a major document, and the house still exists. Like, the rooms that assigned in still exists in Milton, and it's a museum that's open 6 hours a year. It's incredible. And the Suffolk Resolves left Milton and actually traveled to Philadelphia, which became the precursor of the Declaration of Independence, and just nobody knows about it. So we're looking at commemorating that. The next town over in Canton, where Paul Revere kind of had his rolling mill and all that after the Revolution, they just redid the whole thing, and they formed the Paul Revere Heritage Site. And when we went up to meet all these people, like, we had lunch in this awesome restaurant, which actually was the rolling mill that rolled the copper that's on top of the State House.
Wow.
It did the metal that's on old Ironsides, the USS Constitution. So it's just incredible. The history is just, like, soaked everywhere.
Yeah.
Plus the chemicals, but the food was good.
No, man, that's what I love so much about that part of the country, is, like, literally everywhere you turn is just so engulfed with history. I'm quite jealous. Every time I get the chance to go up there, I always tell my wife I could very, very easily move there. I may regret that in the winter, but the rest of the year, I think I'd love it.
I think it gets pretty cold where you're at. It's the same thing.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
Not bad. Kansas is cool. It's flat. So there's that. But yeah, it's just, there's so many things that are happening and people are reaching out left and right. Were you up here when we went to Concord after that Masonic Con? Or did you have to fly out?
I think I ended up leaving quite early that morning.
Okay.
I think that was the one where I like flew out at like 2 or 3 in the morning.
Yeah, that's horrible. You had to be back for something, I think. Whatever. I forget what it was.
Yeah, I don't remember. Was that my infamous trip where I got lost and you found me at Prince Hall's grave? That was the next year.
That was the first year, I think.
Okay.
And then the other one was well, anyway, in Concord, where the war started, Lexington, Concord, and all that. That'll be in 25, but overlooking the North Bridge in Concord, beautiful property called the Old Manse.
Okay.
You've heard of that, I'm sure.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
Nathaniel Hawthorne's house, Ralph Waldo Emerson lived there for a while. And then after that, there was like 3 generations of Masons with 2 grand chaplains and a junior steward or junior grand steward. It's pretty funny, but come to find out, one of the guys that takes care of the house is a Mason. And now like we have this piece of history that overlooked this battle that literally turned the world around. It just,
right.
So we're talking about programming around liberty and literature. What influenced all these authors that lived in Concord by the war? Were they influenced? How was it? Louisa May Alcott, Henry David Thoreau. I mean, there's an incredible list of authors that came from this one little New England town. It just doesn't make any sense that they weren't influenced somehow. So
for sure,
I mean, there's just so much potential programming. It's like mind-boggling sometimes.
Most definitely. So I'm curious. I mean, obviously, there's so much to consider here. When did you guys first start planning this? Like, when did this become a topic that like we need to get on this?
The previous Grand Master, Richard Maggio, formed a committee in 2020, and he appointed the current Grand Master at the time. Well, at the time he was the senior Grand Warden, George Hamilton, as the chairman, and it was understood I would take it over after, but it wasn't understood. Like, we don't have a progressive line, so him being Grand Master was a surprise to everybody and sped everything up for us quite a bit. So we met at a steakhouse and he laid out like the most amazing plan. Because my thought went, all right, well, we're going to commemorate 2026. Let's start planning now. We'll have a big banquet or something. And he laid out like this whole historical timeline of everything that happened in Massachusetts. And it just blew me away. And we've just been feeding off it and picking what we can do and what are other people doing and who can we partner with to do this. And I mean, the partnerships are the amazing thing, just to have people that are as passionate as you about history and, to show them something they've never seen, like, is really cool.
Yeah, most definitely.
And they do it to us too. They just rediscovered Joseph Warren's powder horn at the Old South Meeting House. And,
wow.
One of our members of the committee, Christian Despina, who wrote an awesome book on Joseph Warren, flew up and gave a talk on it and got to see it. And, just incredible.
There's so many really impressive facts that you're dropping here. I think the biggest one so far is that you guys planned ahead, because I think we see so much in Masonry. It's like, oh, is that this year? Yeah, we better do something. Like, to have that come out and like, we're going to do this, we're going to do it right, is fantastic. And then to hear to the level of what you guys are planning, that's going to impact the community, that's going to be, recorded and documented for history, just quite impressive. I'm curious, How far in the hole are you guys on this?
What do you mean? Like financially?
Like, fine, yeah, you've got to have quite a bill on this going. Really? Just very resourceful.
Everything pays for itself, right? So every event we hold, like we're going to open Grand Lodge and bring speakers in, like there's no bill, gas and electric, I guess. But so our big bill, which I haven't really talked to you about yet, is we just started fundraising at the June quarterly to cast a 5-foot cannon and a statue of Henry Knox, and we're going to retrace the Knox Trail through Massachusetts, stopping in the communities and partnering with districts and to put on major events and focus on Henry Knox and showcase him. And the goal, hopefully, we're still working on the Parks Department, is to place the statue of Henry Knox on Dorchester Heights, where he eventually would get to, which caused the evacuation day.
Wow.
So that's going to be incredible. Some red tape, but we've already gotten some significant donations from it. So everything is, funding. And if you make something cool enough, people want to be a part of it.
Yeah.
Right. Like, you donate a certain amount, then all of a sudden you have this statuette of Henry Knox that there's going to be a limited number of them. Ryan Flynn's going to be commissioned to paint a new portrait of Henry Knox. And then there's going to be numbered lithographs that are signed. And if you donate to this tier, you're going to get one of those numbered lithographs.
Wow.
It is a lot of planning, but it's a lot of people working together, which really is making it not that bad.
Yeah. I mean, that's really creative planning. And I guess that's why you guys are in charge, right? Like, to have those masterminds to know how to bring this together, what we need to do to get us in a good position to pull this off. That is what puts Masonry in the winning place. That's fantastic to hear. I am honestly stoked to see this event come together.
Yeah, we're going to cover some more of the stuff. The Northeast Grand Masters Conference is going to be up here in a couple weeks. I believe it's a week before your Masonic Con.
It is, and I'll be there.
So you're going to get to, well, you'll see the reactions of some of the Grand Lodges anyway. But just the level of excitement and follow through that we've had from Freemasons has blown me away.
Yeah.
I don't want to come across as cynical, but I've been failed on a few times, to say the least. So to see so many brothers like show up. We're putting together a Liberty Tree program where we can plant a Liberty Tree in the center of any town, USA, and put on a ritual and talk about, basically weaving the symbolism of our positions into it, wisdom, youth, strength, and all that, and the tree and how it symbolizes the liberty of America and the future generations. And, wow. It's incredible, and we had a Liberty Tree. So it's symbolic for us. It was cut down by loyalist bastards. But now it's a painting on the side of a building where the tree used to be.
That's awesome. So you said that's going to become a program?
Yeah. We're hoping to have it done and be able to hand it out at the Grand Masters Conference. So you just take the ritual and roll with it. It's a reason for you to go down to the City Hall and be like, hey, let's plant this Liberty Tree.
Yeah.
It's a program. We can do it publicly, and it costs you a tree. Like,
right.
$50. So
that's fantastic. I'm really stoked for that. The Northeast Conference Grand Masters, I'll be talking at that, and I'm really stoked to definitely be there. One, to hear more details, to see the reaction of the other grand officials there, and definitely to hear more about that very program, because I think that would be pretty cool to try to bring back here.
Absolutely. And everything we're doing, we're making available, and we're trying to, as much as we can, not make everything Massachusetts centric, right? We want to make it so you can be like, well, if you change these 8 words, you can put it in your jurisdiction with no issues.
Right.
So I think that's what's important, is you do something successful, share it, kind of like Masonic Con. Like, it'd be stupid if I threw a fit if every time somebody wanted to have a Masonic Con. Like, that'd be ignorant. So it's all about sharing it.
100%. I think that's one of the beautiful things, that Masonry is finally kind of progressing to that point that I feel like we're seeing on a large scale now, where Masons are understanding it's Masonry. It's not just Kansas Masonry and Massachusetts Masonry and California. It's Masonry, and we've got to come together with that picture that what we do impacts Masonry as a whole, and not just our individual lodge or individual jurisdiction, etc. Because in the past, like, we've looked at that, and we often find ourselves kind of fighting one another, like, not in a bad way, but always trying to outdo, and it often doesn't work in a great way towards the whole. But I've noticed that, especially with, this digital age taking over, where kind of we have like this platforms, we're able to communicate so much better. We're starting to see Masonry come back together. And I think it's a really vital time for it, but I think it's going to be really great in the long run.
Absolutely. But I think that's what it's about.
Yeah.
Like, nobody that's not a Mason cares if one jurisdiction thinks they're better than another one. And I think it's been a tough lesson to me, because I come from Massachusetts, which is very stringent. We're very tuxedoed and prim and proper and clean everything. And, for me to respect the way of Masonry in other states has taken a while. But now it just, I don't know, something clicked. I don't know if it's not a fight I want anymore, but if everyone's happy and they're doing good work, then they're doing good work.
Yeah, no, I will 100% give credit where it's due. I can say, when I've come up to Massachusetts, experiencing Masonry there kind of relit my passion for Masonry in a time period that it wasn't so great. So, I mean, you guys are obviously doing some pretty amazing things up there. Obviously for Massachusetts, but for Freemasonry as a whole, you guys have such an amazing impact that you're putting out, and we're all better for it. 100%.
Well, we've actually been connecting with, like, the New England states on collaborating for things. Right. So if we're doing something, there's no reason that we shouldn't do it together. And I think I love that. That's something that's always hurt, because you don't understand Masonry unless you travel. Right. You can't even argue it anymore.
Right.
Like, you just don't get it. So seeing the benefits of that and collaborating, like, we're trying to do like day trips where we hit like 3 or 4 historical sites in a state, and we just promote it between the 2 states. Something as simple as that. It costs your Grand Lodge literally nothing.
Right.
You just promote it, and then have somebody coordinate it. It's so simple, but yet it seems in the past it's been so difficult. And I don't know. And I'll say that we've been very fortunate, because the past few Grand Masters, including the current one, have been very liberal with allowing us to do what we want. In regards to myself and Mike Jarzabek, and really trying things that might not have been okay in the past.
Yeah.
Obviously not breaking rules or anything, but just new ideas.
Sure. Well, I think there's huge benefit to, obviously they have the right guys in those positions, but like, obviously that's something you want to be careful of. Make sure you have the right trustworthy guys to take stuff like that on. But I think one thing that kills so much in Masonry, not just in the large sense of killing programs, but just, killing that fire, is that death by committee. And we see that, in lodge, in Grand Lodge, independent bodies, just everywhere you can imagine, because you can't please everybody. But to give somebody the power of make this work is quite impressive. And like, I think that's where we see that innovation. That's where we see that progression, and it's needed. I mean, with anything, like even dealing with companies these days, like I do web design, right? So when I deal with a company and it's like, oh, well, we want the entire board to have input on this website, that website's not going to go anywhere. It's not. Appoint a guy, let me have one contact point, and we'll get some answers and we'll get some work done. You gotta have that ability to go. So to hear that explains to me a lot why we're seeing so much progression coming out of your guys' jurisdiction.
Yeah, I mean, I can't agree more. And you've been fortunate in Kansas that they've followed and supported your Masonic Con as well. I did my last one right after COVID, but we missed the COVID year, and it is what it is. But before that, like, I never had Grand Lodge representation at my Masonic Cons at all, and
right.
Arguably I didn't invite them, but and it's nothing against it. It just it wasn't about confusing why we're doing it.
Yeah.
And I do think that's important.
And that's one of those issues that wasn't independent to you. I'm not going to throw anyone under the bus here, but I know another brother that held a Masonic Con after your guys's kind of had that same deal where, well, Grand Lodge found out about theirs and they wanted involved and they wanted the grand honors, and he just had to look, this is only Masonic because there's going to be a bunch of Masons in the same place. You won't get any titles. You won't get introduced.
Yeah. I mean, it's what it's about, right? We're not here for titles.
Yeah.
Like I'm not doing any of this. I'm literally doing everything for the 250 committee because I'm passionate about the history, and to be a part of something like that is my excitement enough, and the whole committee feels the same way. It just to be a part of it is really the gift.
Most definitely. Well, man, before we get to the end of the hour, I want to make sure, while we have a bunch of live listeners here, how can people stay in tune with this event, keep up to date? Do you guys have website, email? How can they get in the loop and get on board with all this?
We do have a website. Well, we have a Facebook page and a Google account, which is kind of like that.
I know a guy, hint, hint.
Yeah, as long as he works for free, we'll see. We'll talk. 250committee@gmail.com. Surprisingly, it was open.
Fantastic. We'll make sure to get that in the show notes as well. Definitely encourage everyone out there listening. This is going to be a phenomenal historic event that you will most definitely want to be involved with. So definitely send them an email and get on the chain of communication and make sure you're there if you can be.
Yeah, absolutely.
So thinking about, I know you talked about a recording. Will there be any kind of virtual access for guys not able to make it there in person?
I would just say God willing. The goal would be yes. We got to work out some of the kinks and make sure that we have everything locked down, because obviously
Sure.
there's a considerable amount of equipment up there for the Scottish Rite, so we would need all their permissions and all that. So that's still in the works. But yes, the goal is yes. And I'm sure like the Tea Party's probably going to be on TV and all that, but there's nothing like Boston in December. And I'll tell you, it's the 15th through the 17th of December, and Boston will be lit up for the holidays and everything, and it's one of the most amazing places.
I can only imagine. So, out of curiosity, because I made a joke one time, another thing, I'm not going to throw a name out here, but brother, when I was up there, offered to take me out on his boat, and I made the joke of throwing some tea in, and he freaked out on me. So how did you officially get them to let you do an actual tea party?
So, I mean, all the credit, again, goes to the Boston Tea Party Museum.
Sure.
So they had to get a permit, and all the tea they throw in has to be loose leaf. So They can't you can't just throw a tea bag in. It's all loose leaf. So they actually have ships leaving England on the same day that the original ships left, and bringing the tea, which they had commissioned by the India Tea Company, which was the original creator of the tea.
Right.
So they're going to bring that tea over. I want to say it's like 250 pounds in crates, all loose leaf tea, and that's going to get dumped in the harbor. So in theory, if all the records are correct, we should be able to smell tea well into the summer. So we'll see. We'll see. That's what all the records say.
And I'm assuming the museum's a 501c3, so they're not going to get taxed on that tea, or this would ruin the entire event.
So ironically, out of all the organizations, the Boston Tea Party Museum is the only for-profit museum in the group that we are working with. So how they're doing all this, I don't know if they have like a 501c3 section of it, or how all that's working. And you know, I don't want to get in the nitty-gritty.
Oh, yeah.
I don't need to know all that.
It was funny, and you got all technical, man.
Yeah, well, you know, it's all about the facts.
It is. It is. We're talking history, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's awesome, man. Well, we've got about 5 minutes here before the top of the hour, and we'll do our toast. Let's kind of bring it up with some final thoughts about this event, what you want people to make sure they go away with on this.
I think that what we want to focus on is there's history in every city. And there's, you know, Masons buried time capsules. They, you know, famous Masons did this, they did that. Like, find those dates and commemorate them. You know, even if you just do a public wreath laying at your first master's grave or something, just you got to get out of the building, you know, or bring the community into the building. Like, the history is so amazing on its own. It's better than watching TV. You start reading some of the actual accounts, and it's incredible. You know, what these people risked was just mind-blowing. Yeah. I mean, if you look at John Pullman, one of the people that was involved with putting the lanterns in Old North to signal Paul Revere, like that small act, he lost everything. Like, he literally lost everything. He had to flee. His wife had to flee. She was pregnant at the time. She gave birth in a hut. You know, it's incredible. Like, none of his property was there. Yeah. And that's all just in the cause of liberty. I mean, imagine that. That's incredible.
Yeah. I mean, these guys aren't getting that glorification in the moment. Like, in the moment, it's real, it's raw. You know, they don't become famous just because they do that. It's like, this was real. It was it was quite intense for him. Like, obviously, losing everything, it's not the easiest thing to do. You know, this is real risk.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. And, you know, there's John Pullman, and then there's another guy, the vestry or whatever of Old North, and literally they both have plaques claiming that they hung the lanterns. Which completely contradict each other, but that's the typical Boston way.
But, you know, I love the fact that you talk about kind of any city doing events like this, because that's one common theme that we hear as a complaint throughout Freemasonry is the public isn't aware of us. And, you know, while Freemasonry isn't history, we have history. History is an amazing way to reconnect with your community. Because if you look at those early members, in a large way, they shaped the communities we live in. If you commemorate that and they happen to be a Freemason, you have a perfect tie-in to your community, and you have a perfect opportunity that we miss probably on a weekly basis to really positively advertise what you guys do, who you are. And we miss that far too often. So 100% agree with you. Dig into your history and utilize it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even if you look at Lafayette returning 50 years later, like, he traveled the entire country, well, as big as it was, I think up to the Mississippi River in east, but he traveled the entire country almost in a year. Like, there's stuff going on about that right now. There's a bunch of organizations that are planning, like, just be a part of it. All you got to do is reach out and be like, hey, what can we do to commemorate this?
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, honestly, like, look at what events there are, and I bet you're going to find a Mason that was attached to it.
Yep.
100%.
Absolutely. And one great thing about us being Freemasons is we have people, and we don't need money. All we want to do is help. And if you go to an organization that's a 501c3 and say that, they are gladly going to help you.
That is a fantastic point. 100%.
Worked for us.
Well, brother, we're coming up on the top of the hour here, and we typically end these off with a toast. Let's see if you would be kind enough to lead us in a toast this evening.
Sure. I'd like to raise my water cup here to
That works.
To all the people that didn't give a shit and they just did stuff that was ruin their lives just so we could sit here and have a toast tonight.
I love it.
To
Cheers.
liberty.
To liberty. What a fantastic way to look at it, because it's so true.
It is.
It's so true. To be able to step out of that comfort zone and truly not care, just to care so much.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's an amazing thing. Well, brother, thank you so much for coming on this evening. You guys are doing some amazing things. You've got your work cut out for you. Sounds like you have an amazing team behind you with this, and I know it's going to be fantastic. I cannot wait to hear more. Definitely going to get that email in the show notes. I urge all of you to further check this out. If you can be there, be there. I know this is going to be one of those events that you're going to kick yourself if you miss it. But Bryan, it's a pleasure to have you back on the show again. You're always a treasure. Really, really appreciate everything you do for Masonry, my brother.
Thank you. And I appreciate it. And send Yvette and the family my love. And I'll see you in another 120 shows.
Fantastic. Say hello to the family as well. We'll see you guys next time. Thanks everyone for tuning in. And until next time, keep preserving the history of Freemasonry.